Wolves are stalking success this season in the shape of a top four Premier League finish and maybe even a European trophy. So how has Nuno Espirito Santo created a hungry, battle-hardened team that may just be the best equipped of all the teams chasing a Champions League place? Well, tonight we run with the Wolves. Hi again. Yes, we're going to focus in detail on one club a little bit later on. But if you think that's all we're about this hump day, think again, as we've got a packed show lined up, and here are the big talking points. Scouser Ross Barkley helped hand Liverpool a third defeat in 4 games, so are Klopp's men having a wobble. And while they can't win it, City can triumph at Wembley again, but they're not the only story of this FA Cup fifth round. But as promised, we're also going to dance with Wolves tonight as Nuno's boys continue to impress. And here to talk about that is a man who, of course, has been writing about Wolves this week for Optus Australia, broadcast journalist Daniel Storey. Daniel, where are you joining me from? I'd like to hope that with those whitewashed, exposed bricks behind you, you're in some hipster cafe somewhere.
I'm afraid not. I'm in my own kitchen in Loughborough, so it's not that exciting, I'm afraid.
Truly hipster, I would have said. Right, let's move on, shall we, to what we're going to be doing today, which is not talking about Wolves straight away. No, instead, we're going to be talking about those FA Cup results. We're in the middle of the fifth round. It's a midweek set of FA Cup fixtures, which is slightly odd. Arsenal winning against Portsmouth on Monday to kick the ball off. And then Chelsea 2, Liverpool 0. The big talking point, we'll get that just a moment. Sheffield United needed Billy Sharp late on to make it a 2-1 victory against Reading, and Newcastle United 3-2 winners despite a bit of a comeback at the end at the Hawthorns from West Bromwich Albion. Noteworthy there, of course, the fact that Reading had both Puskás and Pele on the pitch at the end in vain. OK, here we go then. Let's get into the headlines. Obviously, it was Ross Barkley, as I said at the top, of scouts to the former Everton man, getting a game for Chelsea, getting a goal for Chelsea, a super goal, that one, after a mistake from Adrian had got them on their way. Ross Rockets, Reds. There's a lot of alliteration on this show tonight, I can tell you, but not in Barney Ronay's world. He writes very nicely indeed. Are we allowed now to call this a wobble, he says. Klopp's men draw another blank to slip out of the cup. And that's where we're going to start this discussion, and that's where I really want Dan to come in here. Let's talk about what happened against Chelsea here, because what we're seeing is more vulnerability defensively. OK, uncharacteristically a mistake from Adrian, but Liverpool can't guarantee themselves a clean sheet anymore, can they?
No, they can't. And perhaps the wobble is inevitable in that, you know, no team can be as relentless as they have for a long period. I think it's probably more of a contrast with how brilliant they've been necessarily than how much they're wobbling now. 3 defeats in 4 games, but they still have a chance in the Champions League, a good chance. They would have wanted to win the FA Cup. Klopp will be most disappointed by this result, I think, than the Watford defeat, which I think was probably just a blip.
Yeah, that felt like a blip, but when does a blip become a wobble? There's a serious talking point for you. Let's have a little look at what has happened to them recently. What we do know is that they've lost their last 3 away games. We know they're playing in a variety of different competitions. And I think, Daniel, just quickly, because I'm going to come to you on this, it's the fact that we've kind of taken the league title for granted. I know they haven't won it yet, that now focuses all the attention on the fact they need to fight back against Atletico or be dumped out of the European Cup. They have now surrendered the FA Cup. And suddenly, it would be incredible to think of it this way, but the season could become anticlimactic as they march to the Premier League. Explain that to me.
Yeah, such is the problem of a team that has effectively won the league in December, and therefore we all became used to that. We became accustomed to them being brilliant, and when that brilliance is normalised, I think it's inevitable to ask what next. You know, is it an invincible season? Is it a treble? Is it 100 points, which is still available? But we look for the next thing. If Liverpool had been neck and neck with City again and won the league by 2 points in May, we'd be heralding them as brilliant champions. So Klopp knows that you need to carry on and, you know, carry on regardless and keep hitting the heights that team has set.
Yeah, it's fascinating. One of the phrases that Barney used in his piece was they need to kind of just kickstart themselves again, and that will be compelling, seeing if they can do it. Right, let's quickly bring you a couple of the headlines from the other results last night. Newcastle ending a 14-year wait as Steve Bruce, of course, plots a Wembley return. They just haven't featured in the latter stages of the FA Cup in recent years, as you can tell. The other one here was Billy Sharp, as the blades prove sharp enough. There we go. Extra time strike. good enough there for a Sheffield United side, which of course is also battling for, dare I say it, Champions League football right now. What was the non-Chelsea Liverpool highlight of the FA Cup for you last night then, Dan?
Yeah, I think it was that Newcastle win. West Brom made 9 changes, which helped them, although it was still a strong team. But the team that Bruce picked showed that all focus is on that FA Cup. Newcastle have been dismal in the cup competitions under Mike Ashley's ownership, and this is a real chance to change that. They are struggling in the league, but maybe the cup gave them a bit of added freedom to try and play some attacking football, to try and get that front three working, and they really much did that. They took a 3-0 lead, they suffered a late wobble, but I think that's the standout story.
Yeah, Sam Maximan once again catching the eye. Joel Linton for once, okay, not scoring, but linking up well, and Almiron, as he seems to do occasionally, scoring his goals in bursts. Let's get into the fixtures because, of course, we've got more action to come and some hugely significant games to be played. Leicester up against Birmingham. Sheffield Wednesday hosting Manchester City, fresh from their League Cup win. Spurs go against Norwich, and Spurs could do with a result. And then, of course, we've got that Derby Manchester United game coming along in a day or so's time as well. That's the Rooney Derby, of course. Let's get straight into a headline dealing with each of those ones, starting off with Manchester City. Now, this was it. Carabao what? It's all about the FA Cup now. This was basically a headline suggesting Pep saying, right, you put that one behind you and you move on to the next trophy. I just wonder, Dan, if anyone can stop City. In cup football, it's so hard to stop them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and where we talk about Liverpool needing a little lift in the league, bizarrely, ironically, Manchester City can effectively park their league campaign. They can go all guns blazing on those cup competitions, and if they do land a treble this season and don't win the Premier League, it will still have been an incredibly successful season.
And it would cast a little bit of shadow on Liverpool because, of course, their hopes of a treble have now disappeared and they will have been in for that. They will have been absolutely, given their dominance, in for that one. Let's move on to another of the stories now, and this is the Rooney one. I alluded to this just now, and I'm fascinated by this one because this sees Rooney putting his love for Manchester United on hold. Of course, he has become quite an instrumental player in this Derby County side right now, and now in his midfield role, he'll look to plot the downfall of Manchester United. Where do you stand, Dan, on United right now? Are you seeing green shoots of recovery? Are you aboard the Bruno wagon thinking, he's going to take them to a good place?
Yeah, I'm seeing the green shoots of recovery solely because of Bruno Fernandes. It seems extraordinary now that Manchester United, having wanted him all season, didn't get him over the line in the summer, and it could have been a very different season with him. He just looks like a player that has a swagger and an arrogance and a demand to lead the team and dictate the tempo, which I think is exactly what we expected from Paul Pogba this season.
The other one, and this is the one that really fascinates me, is the Spurs-Norwich game here, because there are several different angles that the press have taken on this one. One of them being this one: Mourinho must keep season alive to convince Kane to stay at Spurs. Now, we're going to talk about Harry Kane and his injury in the context of England and their summer plans later in this show. But this is fascinating to me. So, to keep Spurs attractive to Kane surely would mean a top 4 finish, but I guess a cup win would also, Dan, suggest, because they don't come very often, trophies at Tottenham Hotspur, that there'd be incentive enough. So there's a lot riding on this, isn't there?
There really is for Mourinho, for his sense that if they aren't going to get in the top 4, he sells himself as a trophy-winning manager. And yes, it sounds like for Kane as well. I think Kane has an inbuilt loyalty to Tottenham more than probably any other leading player in the world to their club, certainly in England. But yeah, he wants to be playing in the biggest competitions. He wants to be winning trophies. He wants to be delighting in the Champions League, and Mourinho's got to provide that.
Absolutely. Just a quick bit of feedback has come in from Imran. Let's have a little look what he's got to say here. Klopp put out a decent team, but was second best most of the game. Not up to Klopp's high standard. Bournemouth and Atletico game can't come soon enough, especially at Anfield. Yeah, I see where you are going there. Someone is standing between the likes of Jose Mourinho and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and a top 4 finish, and that someone is Nuno Espirito Santo. He is in charge of a Wolves side that is very much, we feel, maybe even heading up that pack in terms of the prospects of making it into the top 4 if Chelsea slip away. We'll talk about him and Wolves next. Well, thanks as ever for being with us, and thanks for getting comments in. We're going to be talking about Wolves in just a moment here, and I'm really excited about them. They are an oddity this season. The team that has played the most games, yet used the fewest players. Now, Daniel Storer, who's with me today, has been writing extensively about them. He's got an article published that I would suggest you all go and read, and he's going to give us some insights into them, and I'm going to say lots of very warm and positive things about Nuno and his team in just a moment, so stay with us. Welcome back. I want to talk about Wolves right now. In a season which has seen, by and large, big sides plagued by inconsistency, there has been one constant, and that has been the tenacity, the endurance, the durability of Nuno Espirito Santo's Wolverhampton Wanderers. They find themselves consistently producing results, despite the fact that they should be tired, they should be stretched. The latest coming when they fought back a couple of times against Jose Mourinho's Tottenham Hotspur, not long after being successful in Europe. So they find themselves in 6th place right now in this division, 3 points away from Chelsea in 4th place, and they will be targeting a Champions League finish. They will do so because they know that their run of results recently has been solid. You don't see a lot of defeats, just that narrow one to Liverpool back there. They also know that they've got a run of fixtures that is kind. That's the first of the 6 fixtures that they've got to come between now and the end of the season. Let's just extend beyond that and look at all of their run through. And I can tell you this, their fixtures are kind. Chelsea, on the final day of the season, they are the only team that is currently in the top 7 in the Premier League that Wolves have to play. How about that? I'm going to bring Daniel Storer in right now as we look at, amongst other matters, the fact that they are durable, that they've won more points from losing positions than anyone else this season. And I'm going to argue, Dan, that they will not go away, that they are battle-hardened and they know what they have to do.
Yeah, and they've already got through the hardest part of their season, which was a Europa League group consistent cycle of Thursday, Sundays, and they took pretty good points from the games following those Europa League games. They are a pretty extraordinary team because they have a very small squad and they have incredible, unbelievable amount of stamina to force through this season. They played 46 matches this season already.
And I was reading that article, we're going to put it up in just a moment, that you wrote for Optus about them, and the many things that came through from there. Well, the most obvious one is that they've played more matches than anybody, yet they've used fewer players than anybody. There it is here. But that's the way Nuno Espirito Santo likes it, isn't it? He likes a lean squad.
Yeah, he actually spoke in January and said I could have fewer players. I could play with 18 if I needed to. And I think his point is that how he operates is that he likes to have this close-knit squad. He likes to have this team morale. He calls it a no-conflict squad where there can be no arguments. And actually, if you've not got any cliques in the squad, if you've not got 10 players who want to play and aren't and maybe a little bit down on confidence, then actually it helps them.
7 players with 40 or more appearances so far this season. Let's get some feedback in. Victor doesn't agree. I don't think he's quite on board the Wolves wagon right now. Victor seems saying, I doubt Wolves have the energy to last through the latter stages of the Europa League games if they progress further, considering they started their season back in July. Fatigue and loss of form may play a part, plus a lack of squad depth. 9 goals in the last 3 games in all competitions. Wolves certainly giving it their all in the chase for top 4. Let's see how they end up. Well, I don't know. I think you've argued against yourself there. They seem to be getting stronger. They do seem to be getting stronger, if you ask me. Let's talk a little bit about the man who's getting this out of them. Let's talk a little bit about a manager who bested his mentor in Jose Mourinho the other day. This is Nuno Espirito Santo, a fascinating character. Let's have a little look at where he's been and what we can expect from him. Nothing particularly of note so far in terms of success, but I do like a career win percentage at his time at Rio Ave, Valencia, Porto and Wolves of close to 50%. This is a guy who I feel absolutely manages people perfectly. I know he doesn't fine his players, for instance, Dan, which I found fascinating.
Yeah, there's also a story that if players are late to training, there's no victim culture. The whole team simply waits on the pitch for the player, waits for the player to get there and kind of almost embarrasses them by the fact that they've let their teammates down. So that sort of attitude, particularly when you're winning, that drives players to want to be part of it. If you're in a squad of 20 and 18 are going to be picked for every match day, you want to be part of that. You need to be part of it. And that creates this hunger and desire that Nuno believes eliminates stamina. League is all in the mind, and that if players are confident and prepared perfectly for games, then they can overcome that aspect of tiredness.
What I like about his Wolves story is that they're delighting in exploding all the myths. They said, as Victor did, that the Europa would do for them. And although they only won 2 of their first 11 in the league, Dan, they did superbly well in Europe, which meant that they built. But I'm interested in, he was George Mendes, the agent's first ever client, right? And as a result, those who said Mendes would be bad for Wolves were wrong, because he brought this guy in, which is the best thing they could have done, right?
Yeah, and he also allowed Nuno, because of his contacts, to bring in a number of players, Raul Jimenez, Ruben Neves, João Moutinho, Rui Patricio. These are players that Wolves would not have been able to attract without those connections. So, it isn't completely pure, it isn't completely wholesome, it feels quite modern football, but it's modern football done in a very intelligent, logical and systematic way.
Yeah, we're going to get onto those Portuguese players in just a moment, because obviously they are hugely significant. But let's just quickly mention Joginder's feedback here, saying Wolves are not scared when they play anyone. They know how good they are. Confidence is a powerful asset to have. If they keep this up, the future will be bright. And you love watching their games. So do I. Let's get on to that point about the Portuguese players. There was a tweet I saw the other day, remarkably, that said that they actually had more Portuguese stars on show in Europe the other night than the 2 biggest Portuguese clubs themselves did. Remarkable, really. How about Sporting and Porto combined? But let's have a look at who they've got. And this is the thing. They haven't just got Portuguese players for the sake of employing Portuguese players or tapping into George Mendes's connections. They actually have Portugal behind them, because they've got really fine Portuguese players, haven't they, who are among the best players in the Premier League, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely they have. And when you think about it, it makes complete sense. It makes far more sense to recruit 3 or 4 players from a country who might know each other at international level than just one, because it's pretty hard to settle in a country, in a new league, in a new culture, at a new club. And when you've got a manager who you know and teammates who you know, that's only ever going to be easier for them.
Yeah, OK. Well, they're the players. Diogo Jota obviously has been the superstar at the moment. I think if you throw the Mexican Jimenez into the mix, then you've just got an incredible combination there. We keep talking about finishing in the top 4, but Europe must be a target for them. I mean, they flew into this competition, and I just wonder, with a record like this, it's really built for them. 14 games played. The only ones they've lost have not mattered to them. Only 1 draw, 11 wins, and 36 goals scored along the way. They look ideally placed to succeed in Europe. It just suits them.
Yeah, and it's become a no-lose situation for them, in that nobody really expected them to attack the tournament as they have. We've seen English clubs that have finished 7th or qualified through the cup competitions not take it seriously. Their attitude has been completely different. I fully expect them to beat Olympiacos in the last 16, where Arsenal failed. And from that point, why wouldn't you go for it? Why wouldn't you dream, even if it means sacrificing that chance of a top 4 place? All
right, OK. So there we are. You let us know between now and the end of the show where you think Wolves finish, and if indeed they could win that Europa League. We're going to come back and talk about Gareth Southgate, who's beginning to focus on the summer and his England squad, and talking about all number of things, injuries amongst them. That's up next. We're going to turn our attention to international football of a kind, really, by focusing on Gareth Southgate and his England team. He's got a couple of headaches. When does an England coach not have a headache about injuries going into a major summer tournament? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in just a moment with Daniel's story. But also we're going to talk about the bright young things, and there are so many bright young things. What about the likes of Phil Foden? Is it too soon for him? Would this summer not be a time for him to showcase what he's got on the international stage? Give us your thoughts on that. We're back in a moment. Welcome back. We're going to turn our attention from club football to international football, but stay broadly in England right now. So I want to talk about Gareth Southgate and England's national team here. The draw has been made, as you might have noticed, for the Nations League, which is the new version of, I suppose, competitive international football that will carry on after the European Championships and through into next season here. The angle, because the papers need an angle, taken here as in the draw because they're up against Iceland. It's an ice chance for revenge, because remember, they were humiliated in France at the European Championships by Iceland, long throws and all that. So that's England's draw. I'm not so much bothered really about talking about England, Belgium, Denmark and Iceland, Daniel's story. I like this format. I like the fact that it's competitive international football. It's not a tournament, obviously, as such. It's a sort of qualifier, but the games mean something, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and Gareth has used them as a chance to lead players who he feels are on the fringes of the squad and can get a chance, and it's the perfect opportunity to do that. I don't think England will be relegated, which is their first fear, and actually they are probably favourites to win that group because Denmark and Iceland aren't quite what they were at their peak, and they will fancy their chances of beating Belgium at Wembley.
Yeah, well, that is a long way off, but between now and then, coronavirus permitting, we do have the European Championships to focus on. And as far as I always say about England, it's always a fitness story, isn't it? Harry Kane, despite some really negative and gloomy comments from Mourinho about his fitness or otherwise, does seem, according to Gareth Southgate, to be on target and on course, as is Marcus Rashford, he said, in terms of recovering from their respective injuries. If they can play some football before the end of the season, they might play a part. So I just want to have a quick chat about that one. It was ever thus that there would be an injury headache for England. This is a big problem, isn't it? If you're shorn of two great strikers, and they really are excellent strikers, these two, then you're almost following this sad history of Keegan, Beckham, Rooney, and then Kane and Rashford being the latest, bedeviling a team when it fancies its chances.
Yeah, I mean, Kane is the one, because Gareth Southgate will be more than happy to use Jadon Sancho and Raheem Sterling on the wings in his 4-3-3, but it's that central striker, it's the dependable finisher that he lacks. Rashford could be kind of gradually brought into the team off the bench perhaps, but Kane is the one above all others that he wants. It's his captain and it's his best player, and it's the player that England have built a team round over the last 3 or 4 years, and yet without Kane I think England have basically no chance of winning the Euros. I honestly believe that. With him they really do.
Let's talk about the other angle here, which always interests me, particularly given that Gareth Southgate came from a background working with the young players, and that is, will he give somebody like Phil Foden an opportunity? He has been asked directly about this, and he just really deflected the question, saying, well, look, there are 70 England qualified players out there, and whoever plays well, I will get in the team here. But given Phil Foden's starring role at Wembley, man of the match in that League Cup victory for Manchester City, he's the one that really is now the focus of all of the attention. That was Manchester Evening News saying that he's put his place in Euro 2020 very much in the spotlight. Let's have a look at the options available to Gareth Southgate, because this is a fascinating conversation for me, Daniel, because you've got Henderson, who, yeah, you think definitely, but Dele Alli's form has been off. Oxlade-Chamberlain doesn't always play for Liverpool, and Barkley has somehow amassed 33 caps. On talent, I would say the likes of Foden and Grealish probably deserve a look in, don't they?
Yeah, I think they do. James Maddison's been out of form recently for Leicester as well. And the thing is, he offers something that England don't have, which is an ability to protect the ball and be a pure creator. Jack Grealish is probably more of a dribbler. James Maddison may be the same. But Foden is all about that final pass. And if we can get Harry Kane fit and we have Sterling and Sancho running in behind the lines, then a player like that is absolutely vital. We've seen that number 10 position being hugely important and something England lacks. So, yeah, I think all power to him. It helps that Manchester City are nowhere in the Premier League in terms of the title race, because it means he'll probably get extra minutes as well.
Just one other thing, when you're looking at Phil Foden here, I've always wondered, whether there was this direct intention to replace David Silva with him. But I also wonder as well whether a player sometimes benefits from just being thrust into the international spotlight in terms of temperament. I don't like the fact that the papers are suddenly picking up that he became a young father at the age of 18 and all this sort of stuff. But that's what he has to deal with more than anything now, Dan, isn't it?
It is, but it should be said he's a very confident young man, and he's got a club manager who knows all about those trappings. He knows about managing that type of player and is determined to look after him. There's a reason he hasn't been sent out on loan, and that's because Pep wants to keep him very close. So I think he's got the temperament to deal with it. All
right. Look, Daniel, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Always a pleasure. Keep yourself well, and we'll see you again very soon. Thank you very much for your contribution, for all the emails that you've been, messages you've been sending us, and we'll catch up with you again very soon. See you Friday. Until then, bye-bye now.